In this demonstration, we're going to talk about the home page and how you could kind of customize some of these widgets in your dashboard, as well as setting it up for other users too. So where all of these are managed at are going to be under your control panel here. And if you click on the control panel, you're actually going to navigate over to the administration heading here. And then you're going to click on Edit Dashboard. So once you get in here, this is where all the standard widgets are set up. So if you don't like any of them, you can delete them out. So for example, there are some that come preset with new sites. So if you didn't like any of them, if you're like, hey, I'm not really concerned about a count for the last 30 days or the map locations. If I don't want those and I kind of want to create my own custom widgets, I can just delete these out and create my own. We do recommend no more than 10-ish, 10 to 15 max, just because, especially if you're pulling a lot of data, depending on how wide that set is, if you did it over, 180 days, those types of things, it's going to be pulling in more data. So it may cause a little bit of a lag time if you're pulling in lots of data and lots of widgets on your dashboard. So just a heads up, it is meant for like a quick snapshot. A lot of the widgets, other than the responses here, aren't really clickable, so I can't click into here. So if I need to analyze some of these form responses or some of that data a little bit deeper, you are going to go into those sections to kind of run some more deeper reports. So just meant as a high level snapshot to kind of see what everybody's doing quickly throughout the site. Also, you'll see the open task widget. Highly recommend never deleting this one out because as you see, anything assigned equipment, form related, training wise will come assigned to me in my open task here. So as a user, if you deleted that out, as an admin for your users, they would no longer be able to kind of take it through here. They would strictly have to go to the app to be able to take their training, which is okay if you want that functionality. But a lot of times, most people want both, where they can log in on the app or the website to kind of complete their tasks from there. So deletions are pretty easy. Let me go back to my edit dashboard here. And you're actually going to see two tabs here, one for public and then one for private. Private widgets are just going to be for you only. So if you create a new widget here, it automatically tags it to only you. So this is where it's saying you can customize it for yourself or for other users accordingly by doing everyone, or do a limited option based off like role or job titles, those types of things, locations, all of that good stuff. And if you do click limited here, it is also going to lean on their roles and permissions on what they have access to. So that is also important. So let me give you an example here. If we tagged a condition for their role here and said that this was only for my foreman role to see and hit continue, which I only have 2 people in there, depending on what data source I set it to, so whether it's that training status or if it's forms data, you are going to need to make sure that they also have permissions if you have that restricted data permission set. And just to confirm that really quickly, that's in your control panel again under the administration heading, same area, roles and permissions here. And then if you're talking about training, what you're going to do is look for the training heading or the forms heading, then also cross-reference it with the role here. And then that will tell you if they have access or not to what you're trying to give them access to. So for example, if I wanted my foreman to see any training data and I needed to give them access, I can either allow them to have access or kind of limit that up by adding a condition based off of their location, or if they're assigned as a supervisor or mentor or manager, HSE on their profile. All of those options are available here by toggling it to that option clicking OK, and now they would be able to see it if they're assigned as the mentor on someone's profile, getting more of that granular option versus just full allowance across the board. They would be able to see everything. Now, if we're talking about the forms data, you would just scroll down one more section to the forms section. And again, if we're creating a widget for them to view form responses data, that's not going to allow them to see that unless they have this allowed, or if they have it for certain forms, you can do that limited option and do it per form, or again, that limited function to say, hey, you're able to see your subordinate submissions by tagging these options in that similar fashion. Or you can even say, hey, you're available to see the 360 inspections, and we're going to create a widget, but it's only going to be for your submissions. So there's lots of granular options in the roles and permissions you can do. And what's really great about doing that is you don't have to create a bunch of different widgets for different locations or different people. You can just leave your widget restricted, and then it gives them access to only the data they need to see on the widget, so that you don't have to create a bunch of widgets for different locations and things like that. If you kind of set it up in the roles and permissions, it's going to lean on that data set. And then, of course, we have the option to unrestrict it totally, so that if you wanted to give them full access to see the data across the board, then they're able to see it from there. I'm actually going to cancel out of this one. And that's one thing with the private widgets actually really quickly that I do want to show you. So let me go ahead and create it. I'll leave it to only me. We'll just do multi-forms response report, which just gives a nice little graph here. You can segment it down by form, and then that will give you a nice little graph of forms that have been submitted in the last 30 days here. So I'm going to go ahead and create that. And I want to show you something that happens with the private widgets. So one thing to note with the private widgets is they will always reorder over your public widgets. So if I go back to my home page here, you're actually going to see my multi-forms report here. Oops, it's kind of duplicating itself here. I might have accidentally hit the clone button on that. But it's duplicating here where it has my multi-forms report here, where it's going to order that over any of the other widgets. So to get around that, there is an option to kind of trick the site, if you will. So if we'll go back into our edit dashboard here. And if you go to your private tab, that's where you're going to find it. And I'm just going to remove that duplicate. And you can see it says private for me. Only I'm able to see this one or edit it in any sort of fashion. So if you wanted to kind of change it so that you could reorder it on the public side, what you do is just edit this little function here and then do limited. And then I can just tag my name here. So add employee, and I can search for my name here, add it in there, hit save changes, and it'll actually move it from the public tab, or excuse me, from the private tab to the public tab now. So now I have it where these options off to the side will allow me to reorder my page in any fashion. And then, as I said, if I didn't really care for that count, I can just delete it. Or if I just want to preview it first to make sure that I'm looking at it correctly before I delete it, I can do the preview option here. Just gives me a view of that one widget here. And I could say, yes, that's the correct widget I want to delete. Go ahead and close that out, and then delete this one out accordingly. So I'm just going to remove that. Also didn't really care for the map responses, so I'm going to get rid of that one and just keep a few widgets here that I feel like are pertinent. So I am going to go ahead and delete this one because this one's not the best data. I actually want to create one from training status I'll show, and then also from my AED inspection. So pulling from some specialized form data. So now we'll just go ahead and add a new widget here. In this one, again, I can make it for everybody if I title the widget here. So this one, I'll go ahead and do the training status widget that I'm going to create, and I'm going to leave it for everybody. And then that way it will lean on their roles and permissions. If they have access to the training section and to see that data, they'll be able to see this widget. But if not, then they're not going to be able to see the widget accordingly from there. The source, there is one for training completions if you want. That's just straight completions though. So I personally like the training status one instead, where you can create this accordingly. And then you can also filter it down if I don't want to see the other status where they're not really assigned that topic, not required for it, also exempt. I don't really need to see that. I can kind of filter out these items accordingly. Of course, if I wanted to filter by any divisions or areas, training topics, all of that you can do as well. And then the segment is where you can kind of break it down by additional items, such as the training topic, which is a big one a lot of people see, like what's the percentage of completion in a certain topic, like back safety, those types of things. So we'll go ahead and segment that down. And it will always do the top 5. So if you want to kind of widen that view, you can do show all. Just note that, as large as your data is, it's going to kind of make that graph larger accordingly from there and start like really getting it small over time. So you might also play with the chart type here in a moment that I'll just show you when we scroll down. The next part is the data for this one. A lot of times the segments will break out a lot of what you're doing, but for the complete versus incomplete status, you can do that here on number 7. Count doesn't really give me a great percentage of what's complete versus incomplete here. So we're just going to remove that one. And then when we choose data here, we get the option for that number of complete. I can also throw on number of expiring, and I can also do number of incomplete. And then if I also want to see what's assigned to them versus what's actually complete for like optional trainings, you can also throw in what's assigned versus what's actually complete there. And then if I wanted to move this up, I could just use this toggle here to go up, and then it moves that to the assigned, to the number of complete, to number of expiring, to number of incomplete there by topic accordingly from here. Gives me a nice little breakdown accordingly from there. Now you can play around with the chart type too. This is where I was saying play around with that. A lot of people, when they have that larger data set, will like that data table accordingly from here. And it will just kind of give numbers accordingly down, as you'll see. So back safety, we have number of assigned. This is our number of complete. We don't have any expiring at the moment. And this is what we have complete. Another one people like is the big number, because it will also give you that percentage of completion. So you can see here that percentage now. So a lot of people like this one as well. And then also you can do a line chart too. Not the best, of course, for training data, but as you can see, it gets a little wonky. But with forms data, submission state, those types of things, if you want to see trend in that for line chart, definitely can set that up. And then, of course, pie chart, which also gives you a little bit of a scrolling mechanism where it does a pie chart for each topic. So as you can see off to the side here, I can scroll through and kind of look at that accordingly. Also, I could change who I want to preview it as, so I could kind of confirm if they're going to be able to see this. So you can see here, Albert doesn't have access, so that's where I can say, hey, okay, now I need to go to my roles and permissions and adjust. Um, you can play around also with the chart type here. So let me go back to my view accordingly. So we'll just make it easy and type in my name so I don't have to scroll and choose myself so that we get the full view again. Donut, again, kind of gives you a different view. So if you like the donut view, you can kind of see this view and kind of hover over it, and it shows the number of complete versus number of assigned. And then also, our chart also has horizontal options. So sometimes the vertical will it does its best to shrink up the text, but if it's really long text, it may kind of do a dot, dot, dot. And so sometimes horizontal is a little bit better for that. It does try to do simple text as much as possible. So if you can make your topic shorter, that also will help. And also on your form side, if you have your topics shorter or like fields shorter for titles, all of that will kind of help on your graphing side. And then you can also do that side by side view. So if you don't want that stacked option, it'll create a line graph for each one. And this is where I was saying over time, if you have it set to all to show all up here, it is going to really shrink that graph over time. So just be aware of that thing. Also, you could leave it like this until it gets to that point and always change it at a later date by coming back into your dashboard, changing it to a data table or whatever makes better sense at that point. So I am going to just go ahead and create it as a data table, and then now you'll see it kind of deleted those other ones in the background, and I could kind of reorder it here and then see what that looks like on my home page. So now I kind of have my new training status widget, and then it's going to load my other ones accordingly that I have up here, and now I have my reordered view of my dashboard. Another thing you can do if you don't want to, click back and forth between your home page is also under Edit Dashboard, you can do Preview Dashboard As, and it will open it up in a new tab, which is probably a lot better for you than that roundabout fashion that I just did to go to the home page and go back. So a couple other buttons that are super handy. We've already covered editing the preview option of one widget by itself. We did not we also covered deletion, but we did not cover the copy method. Copy is really great, really easy. It just makes a straight copy for you, even titles it with a copy so that you can create it and then go back in and edit it and change the parameters as you see fit from there. I'm just going to go ahead and delete that one out. And then I do want to show you how to create a form responses one. So if you create a new widget here, you can also do form responses and then pull some data accordingly from there. So on this one, I'm going to do the limited option, and then I'm just going to say that this is only for certain roles. So I'm going to say this one's for my admin roles. So I'm going to choose my admin, maybe also my VP of the company. I want him to see this widget, and then I have my limited view here for just those people. And here I'm going to create or choose, I should say, the AED inspection as the form type. And then it will filter automatically to the last 30 days. So if I want to widen that, I can just remove this X. And then if I want to reapply it to maybe year to date or an additional kind of range from there, I can just add a new condition and do the submission date again. And then do, I want to do a year to date widget in this case, and then hit continue. And now it will filter it up to the responses for just this year. The observer, I'm going to leave it on all. That just means the user who's submitting the form. Of course, you can limit that down accordingly, just like you can the widget view, but we're going to leave it for all as is right now. Now, typically for the forms, instead of the data set, like the training status widget kind of comes for adding everything under data for the training status, it's actually different for forms. All of the segments or selections, if you will, in the form become a segment option. So for example, I have location in there, I have service line in there for them to pick from, and then these are all the inspection questions that go through the actual AED inspection. So if I want to see the number of inspections submitted by location for the AEDs, I can go ahead and choose this as a segment. And then again, it's only going to graph the top 5 locations that have been submitting in the last year. So if I want to widen that and click show all, I'll go ahead and click show all here, and it'll kind of widen that graph accordingly. Again, my site is a little bit of play data, so it didn't widen it further, but if I did have further information, it'll kind of graph accordingly from there. Also, another fun one is using this any date field in the form, such as the submission date. So the date it was submitted into our site from the user, you can use that. And then the intervals are pretty cool to break it down accordingly from there. So most people don't like the daily one. Most people will do like a monthly or a quarterly or an annual type basis and kind of break the graph down accordingly from there. So I like the month plus year option. And again, if I wanted to show all across the board, or if I just wanted to show the last 6 months, I would just choose top 6 here, and then it would only show me the last 6 months. And then you can see here, it will segment it down by the location down here, and then the month and year accordingly. Now, if I kind of want to change that up, I can kind of flip this accordingly, and then it'll give me that graph accordingly from there. So you can see now we have it split out by the actual location and month and year, which is doing a little weird here. We might need to do the data table to see the actual month and year here. There we go. So they were both submitted in August. That's probably why it was combining them whenever I flipped the view, because they were both submitted in August. So it's not breaking them down yet, probably until we submit another item. Probably, actually, let me switch this form up. I have more 360 walk around inspections that'll give us a little bit better gauge here. So I should also have a submission date so we can kind of flip this around, do show all. We'll do month plus year. And then we'll also add a segment in. In this case, I don't have location, but we'll do the vehicle number. So the vehicle receiving the inspection. If we did have that selection for location, that's another thing. We just need to make sure the form has the item in it. Otherwise, we won't be able to graph by it. So now we can see a little bit better graph of showing the month plus year, and then by each equipment type that was, or each equipment number that was inspected accordingly from this 360 walk around. So this is a little bit better graphing view. And then we can actually flip it around and kind of show you the difference between the equipment number being number 1 and then the month plus year. I will say it will let you do up to 3 segments and then it will cut you off. So just be aware of that. And that's mostly because the graphing can get a lot, especially when you're talking about pie graphs and things like that. Segmenting more than 3 times gets a little wonky as well. Also becomes difficult if you've ever done pivot charts in Excel, doing more than 3 or 4 options in there. So now you can see again, kind of splits it out by equipment, but then now the months are at the top accordingly from there. Again, if you want to play around with the data table, you guys kind of saw a little bit what that was like. Big number also will kind of give that scrolling mechanism as the pie chart did as well. So you can see here account by each equipment and the year that it, or excuse me, and the month and year it was inspected. Also that pie chart that we've already showed before. So really play around with those options, see how you like the data to look, and then kind of create your widget from there. And then, of course, once you get it created, you can rename it. I didn't show that function, but the title is going to be what shows at the top of the widget. And then this is also an internal name, what shows on the dashboard page. So when you're looking at this page here, that name is that secondary name on the widget that's going to show right there. So if you need to give a little bit more instruction, you can kind of title it a little bit different, but then make it short and sweet on the actual widget that shows on the dashboard. Again, if I wanted to reorder this one and kind of bring it closer to the top, I can reorder that and then preview what my dashboard looks like from there to make sure it looks good, or also preview as another person too. So I could kind of give it a minute to load, see what my dashboard's going to look like. Again, since I have by all those locations, gives me that scrolling option to see it accordingly from there. And then I also have another graph down here for 360 walkarounds just by that equipment number that have been submitted. So that's pretty much the dashboards in a nutshell. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to the support team at any time. The email is support@kpaehs.com. Thank you so much.